right here. I will hand the mic over to Jules, who can introduce all the other guests who are going to be talking with him.
This panel is about a project that we did for the Roddenberry Archive. As many of you may know, as probably have seen, we've been working with preserving the history and legacy of Star Trek. My best friend, Rod Roddenberry, his dad created Star Trek, and an endowment that he put into OTOY like 15 years ago led to us, preserving and building digitally every set, everything from that world. And so what's interesting is, I guess about 4 years ago, we started exploring in the very smallest of ways these concept videos, 20 seconds, all rendered in Octane and a little bit of live action. And we put this out, I think, along with the documentaries, along with this interactive web experience, and then it just blew up. It got like millions of views. We did another one later that year, another one in 2023, which was 2 minutes long, and that got like 5 million views. So by the time that we got to 2024, and it was the 30th anniversary of the 7th Star Trek movie where Kirk dies with Captain Picard. It was this whole thing, and Shatner never played Kirk since then, right? And you'd never really seen Kirk since that moment. So the idea with this piece, and it was sort of Paramount let us do it. We have a license from them, and we did it under the auspices of the Roddenberry Archive. It allowed us to explore a moment in time, or out of time, where we could do this reunion with Kirk and Spock. They died off screen, both characters, right, without ever having seen each other. And even Spock dies off screen. We never see that. We hear about it, like Zachary Quinto Spock gets like a bullet, and it's like, oh, original Spock is dead. Sorry. So and you just never see that. I mean, unfortunately, Leonard passed as they were filming the last Star Trek movie, which was 10 years ago, and so they put this snippet in there. J.J. Abrams put this in there in the third of his movies. So I felt a couple of things. I felt as a fan of Star Trek, I really didn't feel great that these absolutely essential characters sort of didn't have great endings or any sort of connection at the end. And as we were interviewing, we got to know William Shatner through the work in the archive. We interviewed him for hours, because we have a documentary section. And there was something that he did at the very end of that interview. I was watching it as he was giving it to us, and he's like, I never got to say goodbye to Leonard. Apparently they didn't speak the last 6 months. There was some sort of disagreement. And I felt that. So when I went back to him later and said, listen, we have an idea for bringing Kirk back, but it would effectively be through you and your connection to Leonard, that sort of seemed to work. And he agreed to, let us do this project with his likeness. And we even offered to have him come in and, we could de-age him. But we also had an actor, Sam Witwer, who ended up playing Kirk. And we showed Shatner the A and B test. Like, here is Sam, as Kirk, and here's you de-aged. And he's like, well, it looks the same. Just have him play me, and that's what we did. So we have an actor that is, Sam Witwer, who's an incredible actor. He's currently Darth Maul, this animated series from Disney. He's starring in it. He is Darth Maul. He's been many things, and I always imagined that he would be a fantastic Kirk, and I think this project proved that to be correct. So we're going to talk about the production of the project. Obviously, as far as everything related to our traditional rendering pipeline, obviously things were rendered in Octane. Aaron Westwood did a lot of the beautiful environments in Cinema 4D rendered on the Render Network. There's some crazy shots where we had to blend that with live action. And, I will say, obviously, if you saw my talks yesterday, we're deep in the midst with the Klings and the AI stuff. None of that was useful for this piece. The technology wasn't maybe there back in 24, but it also, as I was sharing with many of you, like the most interesting models for the kind of stuff we're looking at is like the switch light stuff that I was showing yesterday, where you can really do good compositing and green screen work. And we just added that to the service, our service, to a studio like 4 days ago, and it's great. So my goal is that, as we learn how to, these productions can be done better with our own tools, with rendering, I feel like it goes back into the ecosystem of tools that we build for everyone. On that note, though, I'm going to hand it off to, I'm going to introduce everyone. Carlos, our director, Leo, our DP of photography, Mildred, who created all the incredible costumes, and Rod Roddenberry, and Dave Blass, our production designer. So if you guys want to all take a seat,
Are we
I will let Carlos.
Are we showing something on the screen?
Yeah, Carlos is going to be driving a presentation.
Okay.
And I will sit back and watch with all of you.
I mean, the thinking was that we could make it informal.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm just going to be basically like passing through, kind of like the beginnings and kind of like how we ended up in unification. But I think we should all talk. It's a bunch of us. and that felt kind of like more
Absolutely.
less decky or less, pitch deck. So maybe I can start. Like
Please.
I joined Jules in 2022. One of the artists, JJ, he's in Spain, and he asked me, "Can you meet this group of people that are using technologies and they're just looking for somebody to be on the set?" And I joined them, and that was the first time that I met Jules. I think they were working with Mike and Denise on shooting Robert Butler, the director of The Cage, the original pilot. And for me, this was all very new universe. I didn't grow up with Star Trek in Spain, so it was really fascinating to see this world. I don't know if you want to talk about like the early testing
Yeah,
days.
well, that is it. So The Cage was the very first pilot of Star Trek that was never aired initially. It was shot in 1964, and Gene Roddenberry, Rod's dad, it was a very rare thing. The studio passed on it after seeing this episode, and they said do another pilot, which is where William Shatner came in as the captain. And the filming for this episode, it didn't go to waste. It was actually reused as a flashback, sort of, in episode, I think, 16 of the original series. And Kirk is watching his predecessor and all this stuff. So the original pilot ended up becoming Star Trek's history. And it was eventually, I think your dad found the footage in like the 80s and put it out fully. But what was incredible is the very first thing we did was let's start at the very beginning and bring the director of that pilot episode, Bob Butler, who's at that time still alive. He was in his 90s, and let's rebuild all the sets and let's bring him in and let's see and let's have him talk about that world, which he did, and it was an incredible documentary experience. But
And where can people see that documentary?
Roddenberry.x.io is where the whole site lives, and of course the OTOY YouTube channel. There's a whole playlist called the Roddenberry Archive where you can see all of this great stuff.
And this is Mike Okuda, who is right over there. Mike and Denise.
Mike and Denise are literally the keepers of the lore of Star Trek. I mean, responsible for the Star Trek Encyclopedia. Worked on the show for decades and know more about it than almost anyone. And we're
And I
honored
got to
have
work with them as a PA on Deep Space Nine in the art department, and I caused hell, but made good coffee.
Yeah, so that was kind of like like what started. It all started with tests.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, Carlos, see if we can do like here's 3 hours on this thing. Let's see what we can come up with. Yeah, that was how the first one of these got done.
Pretty much. I mean, I remember there were some tests that were happening, and already visually you can tell where it's headed. I mean, they were, I was very impressed already. So this is basically Mahe, and then that's the character that was playing from The Cage.
That's Rod's mom to the right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can see the date on that is
Number
November 30th, 1964. So, yeah.
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 And at the same time they were doing already like CG tests, and ultimately what I started doing at one point after helping Jules and Mahe on the set, I basically said like I can try to put this together on a 30-second piece, just edit like a little test, and that kind of like led to
Everyone knows what this is. I mean, I love, it's my favorite shot. It's the Smithsonian. And
Yeah. So there is in the 90s they did a comic book, which is the only time that the early that first episode of Star Trek was expanded, right? And in this episode, the character that May's playing goes into the future, sees that the ship is in a museum, and Kirk never becomes captain of the Enterprise. And this is a great story. It's the only story we really had to go on. This is before they did the whole new Star Trek show, which takes place in that era, which is pretty much not the same timeline, and we just brought that to life. And it's sort of a deep cut of the lore, but people, once they realize where this is from, they loved it. And it is a great shot. I mean, basically, and you can see that's the Space Shuttle Enterprise in the foreground. There's a sailing ship, the legacy of the ships. I mean, and of course the real Enterprise, the 11-foot model of the show, is in the Smithsonian. So there's a whole connection to that, and that was one of the great meta callbacks of this shot and this short.
Yeah. And I think after we put this 30-second piece, I think I was on another project, and Jules started working on this project, Memory Wall, and at one point, I don't know if you want to talk about it. Magma.
This is the shot I showed yesterday, where it's like we were trying to film this scene where the character goes into that portal. It was such a, we filmed it, green screened it, and it was a very, very hard shot to composite. We had the set. So if I don't know if you guys all saw my talk yesterday, where I was showing how like 4 days ago with the Switch X model, we were able to take the 3D scene, the 3D scan of May, and this footage, and it finally came together. But 4 years ago, that we didn't have that tech, and so we also didn't have the AR wall set up in a way that where it could work. You know, you have a scene where you have the characters' feet on the ground, and Carlos, I think we'd had tests done with the green screen. They didn't look good. We ended up actually redoing it all in CG for that shot, or even her walking. And you know, that's 4 years later that we have different tech that could have taken this shot, and it looks great now. So.
Is this Kellen?
I think that's Kellen.
Is this Kellen, right? Yeah. At one point, we connected, and because I wasn't on this one, like Jules was initially directing this one, and then I connected with Jules, and in talking to him, it's like, you want to do like a collaboration on this piece, like co-directing it?
Yeah, well, I started directing, and I realized I'm in way over my head, and I shot all this stuff, and I basically brought in Carlos to finish it with me, because it was a lot of work, and I had never. You know, it was my first experience really putting all these things together. I had a whole, I mean, you know, for me, the story of all these things was already there, but trying to assemble it together was really tough. And plus, it still ended up having to be a piece that was basically a minute. So I think with Carlos's help finishing up the piece and also creating an incredible edit, it came together really nicely, and I was really grateful that outcome, you know, happened. And you know, there's still a lot of footage from that you know we haven't used, which is why I was testing it with some of the stuff that we can maybe use to.
Yeah, basically I took like a week worth of footage, and I just tried to make it into like some sort of teaser, and that's what really Memory Wall ended up being. It's just a teaser type of, you know, and you know, we did like some pickup shoots, you know, for it, and we had some CG. So we just kind of like, it was more of a mood piece more than anything else. You know, it wasn't really, the third piece became more of a sequence, and the fourth piece started feeling more like a narrative short film. But there was like, you know, beautiful work. And I think based on that experience, like then we went on to doing a third one, which was Regeneration. And on this one, that's when Jules, like, you know, he basically allowed me to start just like planning it, like as if it was any other production. So like literally like creating you know, inspirations for the first time. Where are you? Like we had storyboards, which, you know, in previous pieces, you know, we were starting kind of like more with finished renders. So I kind of wanted back to kind of like, you know, the way I'm used to like planning, which is just the script, well, treatment, outline treatment, script, and then I can go into storyboards. But without storyboards and planning, I feel very useless in a set. Like I don't like to improvise on a set at all. And you know, I started learning about the Enterprise D.
That was Picard's
Generations. So the first Star Trek film I ever watched was Generations. I ended up kind of like not in order. But I wanted to know what I'm directing and what is the elements from, you know, from the props of whatever I'm directing. So there was a lot of that kind of learning, you know. So for me, I had to like catch up to a lot of people here that has grown up with Star Trek just within the last 4 years. And if I always have like a million questions I don't know. So I always ask people, you know.
Yeah, I will say that one of the reasons why I liked having Carlos in on there is I wanted a perspective that was like from somebody that was, you know, like the films I like Kubrick's films, coming into this world and not necessarily coming in with like because, you know, even for me, I was like, when I was doing that second piece, it's like all this Star Trek lore, I wanted it to be just like an episode. And the truth is, some of the pieces, the way that certainly the early ones worked was because they almost didn't feel like exactly like the Star Trek you would remember, although they were certainly steeped in the lore. It worked really well. And I think that, you know, you look back, a lot of people's favorite Star Trek film Star Trek II, right? The one with Nicholas Meyer, and he had never, I don't think he'd even seen an episode of Star Trek before he came on as a director. Watched all 79 of them in a row and then came up with the story. But you ended up with an interesting Star Trek film at the end of that was very character driven, that almost felt, like it had a fresh perspective. And that's, my favorite movie, by the way, is the one before that, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which, Rod's dad worked on, and to me, that's like the one I really want to focus on. But there is something special about having, the world of Star Trek, interpreted through a different lens in certain cases. And I think with Carlos's almost coming in with a fresh eyes to that world of Star Trek, not even understanding or knowing the history the way that, a lot of us did, but learning along the way, I think it shaped the way these pieces worked, and I think to a successful place.
My background is not, it's in animation. So I was an animator before I became a director. And one of the animated movies I worked on was a movie called Cars in a Pixar. And the director always told us this story where he screened the film. It was inspired by NASCAR, obviously. And the director's wife, after screening one of the versions, was like, well, you're doing this movie for the NASCAR audience. Can you also make it for me? I know nothing about NASCAR. So with Star Trek, the more that we've been doing, I bring up the questions, not from a Star Trek being grown up story, but more from the human part of the story, which is like, if I'm not feeling for these characters, that something is missing in there somehow. And I think it was on this piece that, we started working with Leo. So I don't know if you want to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
This.
Well, it's like a dream come true. Star Trek, hello. And so then when I saw what they were doing with it, I knew that we had to light certain sequences in the same spirit with the same instruments, from the 60s. So I'm using Mole Richardson specifically using Mole Richardson tungsten lighting on their skin tones and on regeneration. Just because of where we were in time, and somehow there's this subtle context to how it was the skin was looking on them, and then with combined with what OTOY was doing, with the footage. So and a lot of my team were all Star Trek nerds, so we're all pinching ourselves getting to recreate sequences like this, the badge from insignia from Generation.
Buried under those rocks. By
Yeah.
the way. For those who aren't familiar with the movie, that's his grave.
But we had to recreate that same lighting for when it was in Generations for our version of it here. But yeah, it's dream come true. What can I say?
And you want to talk about? There's a big technology component. Face replacements that was started shortly after I started, and that was the.
I'll speak to that a bit. So, as I mentioned, so there is a we've been doing light stage scans for decades, right? So we had digital faces. We've been serving the industry. Every Marvel movie, all the DC shows. We scan the actor. We give the 3D model to like an ILM or a Weta. But, we wanted to start to almost finish the service to the end, and we ended up building a pipeline around being able to track the face. So we used to put, dots on the face to track it, and it was a whole process. Not anymore. We could do markerless face tracking. Lawrence Selleck, who was actually here yesterday, he plays Spock. He's been playing Spock for all of our shorts going back 4 years. And he's playing at different ages. This is meant to be in sort of an older Spock, but the technology we have can take. We had busts of Spock. If you saw some of the CG Spock, so we could take that, or even build a model from footage, and then that can be driven live with the lighting on the actor, and it runs on. You can now do 6 faces in 4K live and on a single GPU. So we could have a laptop on the set. Carlos could see it. Larry could see himself. And it's essential for us to be able to get a really good performance out of this. And we ultimately found that it was, and it's different. It's really not generative AI. Obviously, you have an actor. It's almost like we did prosthetics on Larry for the very first piece, full Spock face and everything. And it looked great, and it was in camera, but he couldn't emote with it, right? There's something about doing it digitally where you end up with effectively the same face and effect, but it's so much simpler and lighter. And more importantly, and especially as we got to the next piece, all the nuances could be explored there. And the actors themselves, I mean, Sam Witwer, he prepared to play Kirk for 2 years. He learned how to drive that CG prosthetics perfectly. So when we ended up shooting it, he was well prepared, and it's a really interesting process.
The mannerisms are really impressive.
They're really good.
And the pauses, and I mean, I think you've all seen it. Those guys, I mean, that shows you what actors can really do.
Yeah.
And that's what I was most impressed with, because it wasn't just that they looked like them.
Absolutely.
They carried that character perfectly, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Essentially, it was better than whoever was acting in the left. Whoever was directing. Oh. I was just saying, it's a lot better acting than whoever is on the left of this screen. You know, whoever was doing that acting, it wasn't really. But this, I found it on my hard drive. The reason being is I want to know before I go into a set what I'm going to be talking to the actors. There's nothing I hate more than going onto a set where there's 40, 100 people, however many, and they all want answers. And so I want to have those answers. So we did that on a quick pickup that we shot on the roof of OTOY for one of the shots, and at least I have a starting point and a conversation about what what the character is gonna do, and I'll talk further about what I did with Larry and Sam on unification, because at that point, even though there was no dialogues, we still had dialogues that I gave them. They just don't open their mouths and talk about it, but I needed them to have something to it. And, we shot other stuff, that we just never ended up using it, because either the technology wasn't 100% there, or that we just didn't find a place for it. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, some stuff ended up on the cutting room floor in those early pieces. But we, and I would say that even on that third piece, it was still kind of like all the stuff we're doing with the, digital faces and everything was still new. But we, I think we even were testing. I mean, Sam was actually almost in the third piece as Kirk, and we ended up not doing that reveal. If you see that last piece, Spock is in this orange room, which is basically this, 70s Star Trek was very orange, had a lot of this sort of tones in it, and that's the era of Spock we're showing. But if you look at what we filmed, it was a scene with Kirk, with Colt, with all of them. And all of that was, I mean, the story is all there. All of the stuff that takes place around that motion picture era was something we mapped out for all these pieces, but it just ended up being like we didn't have it all ready to introduce Kirk. So Kirk was then, all of that was saved for the piece that followed, and it turned out that was, plus we also while we were in talks with Bill Shatner, it really didn't come together until our fourth piece. So all the stuff with Kirk and in that earlier era that we shot was just left aside. And then we went forward on unification to do it I think in a much better way.
I think all these pieces have been leading up to
Yes.
preparing a team, preparing I think always the hardest thing is always to crack is always a story, no matter which studio, no matter which movie. And in this one, it wasn't any different. I mean, a lot of, this has been our process for a long time. It's like me trying to get...
There's a Roddenberry bench, by the way, at Huntington Gardens, where we filmed the fourth piece. There's a Roddenberry bench that was dedicated to your mom and dad at Huntington.
Oh.
Yeah. A little bit of meta. Yeah. Yeah.
I think for unification, we spent like weeks only talking, and me trying to get into the brain of Jules in terms of
Good luck.
These characters that I wasn't familiar with, and but and then me writing notes, and then out of those notes starting to wrap my head around, well, what is really like 30,000 feet high up concept of this, and starting to kind of put either inspiration images or something, It still ended up being more of a tone piece. We didn't have a script on this one.
I did, but I never shared it with anyone. I told you what the story was, and I was like, I can't show you this. I don't know why I had this process down, but I was and I'm glad it went that way in a sense, because I still feel you're right. It ended up being very much of a tonal piece. So yeah, and also there's a lot of things where it's like with Paramount, even with Bill Shatner. I mean, as we were getting bigger and bigger in these pieces, it was still like everyone wanted to be very cautious with the storytelling, because honestly, these were put out as concept videos where it's like you're not exactly. I mean, it's a tone of Star Trek. There's call-outs to the lore, But in the end, one of the things that convinced Bill to let us do it is that there's no dialogue, And then in the end, he can see that, well, you can have dialogue. It'll be me talking with his dialogue from Star Trek 2 over a section where, Kirk is in this sort of 2001 tunnel sequence where he sees versions of himself at different ages. And Bill was, okay, well, you use my voice for that. And, going forward, who knows what we'll do. Each of these pieces, by the way, whenever we do it, it's always like with the blessing and permission of Paramount. It's a one at a time thing, so we never know really what we'll be doing after the one that we just finished. Although we always, of course, have more ideas. So.
Yeah. So a lot of this is like I'm not these are my sketches and they are like stick figures, as you can tell. That's why like I always get like amazing artists, and we've had amazing artists on all these pieces. Because I can take a simple stick figure and they totally translate into something that then it can be shown to people, and they're not terrified of looking at this, whatever the hell is happening in there. It makes sense in my head too. And with the location, I don't want to kind of like get through it. I love this part. There we go.
And we're playing Kirk. Yeah.
But again, going back to planning before I pass it to Dave and Mildred, I want them to also talk. Like we film in Huntington Gardens, and we only had limited days of that, so we ended up like basically taking photos of the whole thing, so that then we could plan a lot, months in advance. We got there. This.
Yeah, the first day was terrible, so we ended up having to shoot it again. And like, if only it could all be rendered in Octane, I could change the sunlights in. But yeah.
But I have to say, I've worked with a lot of producers, and it's rare when it was all overcast. We only ended up using one shot of it, and at one point I had a hard conversation with Jules, where he's like, "Well, what do you think about what we shot?" And I'm like, It's not what we originally planned." And to his credit, he's like, "We'll go back."
Yeah.
He always shielded me from the financial conversation, and that is rare. So we went back, and we got beautiful weather, and the rest is like
worth
what
it.
you guys saw. It was very hard to go do all this planning, get to Huntington, and as soon as we get there, 7, 8 in the morning, it starts to rain, and you are like. And it's like, well, like 100 people were there.
Yeah. Beautiful. Those are beautiful shots, by the way, of the environment that Aaron Westwood built in C40 and Octane, and they're just gorgeous. And they're in that piece, right, where we go to the back of Kirk's feet at Huntington, or Sam's feet, and from this beautiful shot. And he built out this thing to the nth degree. It's
all CG. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, by the way, it's based on Mackinac Island in. If you ever saw the movie Somewhere in Time, that was sort of the inspiration for a lot of the ideas behind that.
And parallel to the planning,
OTOY. So that's D.H. Bill in the top right. Oh, he was very funny on the call, and Mike and Denise were there as well. And he's like, "Oh, you aged me up on the left," And I was like, I mean, it's incredible. At 93 or 4, or whatever, he was just incredible energy. It's unbelievable.
And it wasn't until I saw the test on the lower right that in my head, when I see a lot of, I think because of my brain as an animator, it's very easy to spot Uncanny Valley. You see it on video games where there's always that little percentage of just feels off. We're always looking at people's eyes. But it wasn't until I saw this test on the lower right that I'm like, okay, then it can work.
And that is the shot that Bill was seeing. Like these are both the things we showed on that call to him. And we'd only shot like really one test with Sam at Huntington, which was the bottom right there. And that's when he's like, it looks as good as me being de-aged, and I think go with that. And so we did.
We tried stuff also with him.
Yeah, and we have 3 prints of Yor. And so there's a character from actually the more recent Star Trek Discovery that we brought in. But we should talk about the costumes and the production design as well.
Yeah. One thing that I will say is we, for months, I was going to say weeks, but it ended up being 2 to 3 months, we looked at every single shot, like, with an eyeglass. almost to the point where sometimes like, I would see the highlights of the eyes on Sam's face, and then I would want to ask Mike and the face replacement team, can we have the highlights? It's a very simple detail, but for me, it's just the difference between a character looking more dead and a character looking alive. It's a simple point. And I would show the team reference of like Casablanca, thank you so much, Casablanca, and you know, and it made a big difference, you know. Was it perfect? Probably not, but it's still, I think it's in those details.
I mean, that was a real-time footage, not the final render, but yeah.
Yeah. I also want to make sure everybody talks. Like, Dave, do you want to, you know?
About production design, yeah.
So I was just coming off with, it was great that they showed the Enterprise D being resurrected off of Viridian 3, because as they're in the process of doing this show, I'm in the process of resurrecting the Enterprise D for Star Trek Picard Season 3. So we actually had to build the entire set and bring our heroes back to it for one final thing. And if you haven't watched Season 3, I'd go run out and go see it. So in that season, they take the Enterprise off Viridian 3, and it's Geordi has restored it, and they use it to go fight the Borg for one last battle. So having wrapped Season 2 and 3 back-to-back on Star Trek Picard, I had not had my fill of working on Star Trek. So when Jules and Carlos called and they said, we have this something special, we'd love to have you involved. And I was like, I love it. And we had one scene in Picard Season 2 where we de-aged John Delancey. And it was like one shot, one scene. And it was like, because we had a couple instances where, okay, we want, really Q should be old, should be younger because he shouldn't age. And then we had Guinan and she was younger, but and it was like, okay, well, the technology's not there. And then they started showing me what was there. And I'm like, where were you guys 6 months ago? And it's like, that would have been handy.
He's always had the technology.
Yeah, and he's got the tools, and he just didn't want to share it with me.
No.
But we showed it to him, and what and I think everyone has said it, but I think what was most important to me was watching Sam Witwer, because as a designer, as a filmmaker working in the industry, and I think we all have the same thing, this whole thing of AI is scaring the bejesus out of people. And one of the things that I could say that empowered me was watching Sam's performance, because it wasn't like he showed up and he goes, "Hi, I'm Captain Kirk." The man studied William Shatner. He studied Captain Kirk. He studied the nuance, and then had to wear a digital makeup. And what was important about it was there was nothing there, but he would watch his performance and what his face did, and it wasn't always a one-to-one translation. It wasn't like he moves his face like this, it mimics what Shatner would do. He would have to do something weird with his face to get it to do what Shatner's face would do, and that was what made the nuance, because there's one shot where Sam turns around and you get that great Shatner turn. It's dead on perfect, but watching Sam do it, because you're watching it live on set, and I'm sitting there talking with Sam, and I'm looking at the monitor. I'm talking with Captain Kirk, and he would watch it and be able to clock himself and get himself into that thing where his performance, and that's what sold the clip. It wasn't that a deep fake thing. It was an actor's performance augmented by digital makeup that made that piece work. And then, from our world, it was just using the technology to expand. And what can you do if you don't have the money to build a giant set and to do all these different things you want to do? And that was using the volume wall. And then also, it was great because, as Carlos mentioned, he wasn't a Star Trek nerd. I was. I grew up as a little kid. I'm going to move to Hollywood and go work on Star Trek. And everyone's like, okay, you're an idiot. That's never going to happen. And I'm like, oh, yeah? So there I was. But Carlos would come to me. He's like, okay, we want to have Spock and Saavik have a wedding. What would they do? And I'm like, oh, allow me to tell you. And I would go through and work with the actors and tell them they should do this with the hand gestures. And so I was kind of the nerd in the group, bringing all those little details and dressing out Spock's quarters and his things and working with all those details, pulling the history. But, Carlos had the sense of what the tone was. And again, it was a piece about friendship, and you don't need to know Star Trek to know friendship and loss and all those things. So whereas I would bring in all the Star Trek aspects and making sure that the sandbox was correct, he brought the heart to it. And I think that's such a key factor.
To add to Dave, this is basically here. This is what I was looking at in all the shoots. I had a monitor, like an iPad, and in that iPad I could see both Sam and William Shatner's face acting, and I could see the Kirk as the character. And I ended up, after the very first day, I ended up only looking at Kirk and talking to Sam like I'm talking to the actual character. And that made the biggest difference because Sam sometimes would actually exaggerate the face to get on character. So it was great to actually look at that. But I wanted to here. Let me
And I'm going to just throw in really quick. This is also we knew that this was the last time we as fans had seen Kirk was in Generation. So what I try to do is I try to match the look and the lighting of those sequences. In a lot of this, I mean, there's the majority of the lighting sequences with Kirk in Generations, and that and so we added filtration. We shot anamorphic in the same with the same kind of circles of confusion, which is basically out of focus elements, and then just to match it so we could bring the audience back to that moment, because I knew that if it was too different a look, then the cue of him out of focus as he's going through the dapple of the trees wouldn't match how we remembered him in Generation. So it's like, so that those little pieces that we threw in there to help bridge the gap between, the 90s and now.
Yeah, 1984 was that last time you saw.
Yeah.
It.
And Dave also helped bring an additional prop, which ended up being part of the character in the final scene, which was the bed.
Spock's deathbed.
I did some previous, and then we handed to Dave, and he brought all of this magic. These are actually things we would receive from Dave. I don't know if you want to talk about any of this.
Yeah, and again, it's a lot of it was it's not a virtual set. There are elements, and the more you can tie our characters to it, and again, when you have your actors, you want to. We'll sit there and it's a silly thing. It's like, okay, the bed's got to be big enough so that Kirk's butt sits on it, and you have to have this height, and it needs to look angled properly, and then how high up is Spock compared to him, and so it was all adjustable, and everything has to be sleek and techie, but. And it's like, how techie? How much do you want to go? So we ended up, we had initially had all these little tech panels built into it, so we were gonna have readouts and such. And then we're like, no, it may be that's gonna be too distracting. We wanted to just be about the character. So we had, but you want to be there, and you don't want to have that situation where like, oh well, Spock's head's too low, so you want to have it lower. So we went through every episode of Star Trek and went through Spock's quarters, and because the idea was that Spock would have gone through and with his people lost, gone through and cataloged, what are the remnants of Vulcan society that are left, and I want to kind of collect it and have it as a museum and again, pass it on. What is my legacy? And that was kind of his room and having some elements. So we went, the little bow chairs were seen in Star Trek 5, I believe, and so we went through and picked up all these things, like what could there be there, what was there, and again, seeing it through many different iterations of Star Trek.
And you're going to be releasing a line of lounge chairs soon?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Blast chairs.
Blast chairs, nice.
What is great about this for me is I will get stuff like this, and I don't have to think about it. So then I can continue concentrating on the human aspect of it, because Dave's got the whole history covered in here. So to me, there was a lot of the stuff that I was like, yeah, fine. It looks great. Like he would come up with all of these images of episodes I never seen. And it's all in there. Like there's a lot of stuff. Some of it, we don't put the camera in it. Like if you can tell, like the little prop on the lower left.
Thank you, Mike and Denise, for that, by the way.
Yeah.
All the props on the table.
It's amazing. I mean, like we went through all of this stuff, and it,
And Dave, we ended up using, I think, all heights of your headrest.
Oh yeah.
Because we were on a crane, and you're photographing somebody who's lying down. The danger is to look up their nostrils, and so I'm sitting there. I'm like doing the math. I'm like, okay, this, and I didn't know this is before I knew it was adjustable. And then all of a sudden, I think Mike or somebody like, oh no, it's adjustable. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that
Having
saved
done
us. Thank
too
you.
many hospital scenes in my career, it's like, yeah, the dead guy is always going to be, sitting up. It's like, wait, why he's dying? I'm like, well, because he looks better when he's, when you're dying and you sit up.
Thank you. It was beautiful.
We also want to bring up the costume design because it was also like a big
Incredible.
part of the character. You want to talk about?
Well, I mean, actually, I want to head over to Mildred, but yeah, I mean, there is some incredible costume work done. I mean, obviously, we had whatever 80 extras, beautiful costumes for Spock and Saavik. There's a scene that was in Robin Curtis, who played Saavik in our piece and the original series. In the novels, she and Spock are married, and we recreate that for her interview. It was sort of subtext for our piece. She has a son, and then which is in the original script of Star Trek 4. They never filmed it, but she's pregnant with Spock's child. All this is, I mean, the costumes are just mind-blowing, and I just want Mildred to talk about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So when you're like dealing with not just like a 60-year-old like IP, and there's been like these iconic designers like going like generations of them. Not only that, but you have like modern interpretations of the 60s, and there's just so many different things to draw inspiration from, and you want to make sure that what you're doing is in service to that as opposed to doing something completely new. And yeah, the you can see up here the reference that we used for her dress, because we wanted to have some elements of familiarity for this kind of dreamlike sequence that Kirk was in, and so we wanted the audience to have that sort of spark of familiarity. So we referenced very heavily this dress that Spock's mother wore. And yeah, we in order to get that kind of the unique kind of trims and that sort of thing that they have with Vulcan clothing, we repurposed a lot of brutalist jewelry from like the mid-century to try to get that kind of like alien kind of textile landscape going on there. And yeah, like just to give you an idea of the kind of details that we got into, like we really got into the weeds. And one of the wonderful things about working on Star Trek is the fans are an incredible resource. They just, you can go and you can do these deep dives of trying to like how did they make this? And there's a forum from like 2006 where they're like discussing like how these things were put together and like down to the fittings. So these snaps that you see, these have been discontinued for about 50 years. They don't make them anymore, but we were able to get them because that's what they actually used in some of the tunics. And the tunic, all those lines that you see, there's a specific tool, a specific machine that they use to make that. And they haven't made those in like they were already obsolete by the time they made these tunics. So we weren't going to get our hands on those. So we had to actually individually stuff every single channel in that collar to make it look exactly like those tunics.
And if you don't know, in Star Trek, zippers don't exist. So if you all of a sudden have a zipper on a show, people will lose their mind. It's like carpet and zippers. It's a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you see with his costume, it's like it doesn't look like it has a zipper in it. It's got like this invisible. We had to have a custom-made zipper to be put into the side so that it was invisible, in any shot.
Did we even remove digitally? There was one or two shots where I think we removed.
It's possible, yeah. There's a lot of rotoscoping work done on some of these shots to get it to work.
Do you want to talk about the shoots?
Yeah, well, so yeah, Carlos, when he boarded it out, and he comes from animation, so he is perfect. Like a lot of and we're in the physical world with a camera, and we're dealing like with the crane, and then the wind is kind of blowing. So it was always like getting the math right and the composition every time was like it was like a precision experiment, and because we're dealing with natural force of gravity, and like see these trees right here, the wind would blow across the top of the trees, so we'd have perfect composition on like below the tree line, and then when we would boom up, if you've seen the piece, we'd go up the spire of the fountain, and then we'd have to counterweight with the crane, and I'd have to move in to brace for the wind to hit the side of the camera, and almost like take us a little off course, but so we'd have to account for that as we were going up past tree line. So yeah, this shot right here, I think we did it like a healthy amount of times.
Yeah.
But we ended up getting it because it's like, and that was the part about the entire crew is like we knew that we were revisiting the legacy of these two. And as a crew, like I borrowed, my gaffer is we're all friends with each other, so I pulled people off of other IPs to bring them into this one, and then once they saw what we were working on, everyone was moving at a different pace that you've never seen before, because we knew that the legacy of these characters of this IP is something that we didn't want to fail. So. To deliver, Carlos and Jules' vision to this, we physically shot a lot of the things. I'm not on the side, typing prompts, on location. This is like we physically shot it with all these guys, and then combined the artistry of everything. So.
And Leo and his team, they were very patient. I mean, there were some shots that we did a lot of times. And, I had already done the previs, and, I had something very specific in my head. So to have a team that, kind of like delivers on that, is always a gift. This is kind of like a shot list, and so there was a lot of this. These are actually from you, Leo.
Yeah. I would chart the sun. Based on and then I would tell the AD order of which where the sun was helping us and not helping us, and then I always had to account for moving this crane and the location. They had some very specific rules that was challenging.
Oh my!
But we were able to navigate that as well. But it was you're moving pieces along in a really big area, and you can't be seeing the power supply for your camera or the tents that are providing the makeup and the wardrobe shelter. So you have to move the pieces around, and you have to understand where it's going to be. And incidentally, this is my glasses, my Ray-Ban Meta glasses. I'm just I can't believe this is what we're doing here. This is amazing. So this is footage from that as I'm looking at everybody and making sure we're doing everything correctly, and Carlos is getting what he needs. So
just to add to Leo, this wasn't an easy location to shoot. I do remember one day in particular where I was looking at the monitor, and somebody from the Huntington Gardens came to my foot and just literally she just moved it. Okay, you were just stepping on this part, but she just literally went, okay, now you're good. It was wild.
Yeah.
Anyways, I showed this earlier, so I don't need to show it again. But that's so you guys see what I'm looking at the monitor, and to see this real time is for me. There was a little bit of an adjustment, because I'm looking at one person in real life, and I'm looking at somebody else on the monitor. But once I got used to it, that was the way to work for me. And there were some great references from Leo.
Yeah, one of the things is we knew that he was coming in to and it's and then you play the math in your head, and you're like, how is how can we really make this the most critical moment where Captain Kirk sees Spock again? This is sacred ground to a fan like me. So coming into that place, we knew that the source of the lighting would be coming from the window that he's up against. So then we, dropped everything down, and then I saw Dave's floor, and I'm like, why don't we kick from the bottom up, and then we'll chop the light so it's not blasting all the way across. It's got this nice little kick. And then I checked in with Mike, and face replacement, and they said, give us a little bit more. It's just like maybe a little bit more, not as from the bottom, and then a little bit, like, so it went halfway up his face, and so then rather than like what I originally wanted, and that was too much, and we wanted to mix it up a little bit. So, and this, a lot of people, this is great. This is a very proud moment for me, and because it allowed us to be with Kirk as he sees one of his best friends.
I want to ask Jules a question. I want to ask Jules a question here, and I'm asking it for everyone because I get to sit down and have dinner with him and pick his brain and ask, what the hell is this? Could you briefly tell us all, because I'm guessing there might be one or two people in here, the intention behind this part of the story, unification. What is your story? What are you conveying in terms of these two coming together? I think a lot of us know the general part, but there's always tidbits and things.
Right. Well, I mean, there's the part, right, where it is, I mean, there's several levels of it in terms of, obviously I think that the idea of since we're portraying not just Kirk and Spock, but we're portraying Shatner and Nimoy, right? And you have Larry and Sam effectively, with permission and by the way, the Nimoy estate was really, wonderful. And we had Adam Nimoy, who's friends with Rod forever. I mean, we were even attempting this. He gets permission. The idea was that it is in universe. You have the reunion of these characters that was implied or possible but never happened. We also were deliberately vague about whether this is a dream or Spock's imagining it. I mean, in the script that I wrote and the thing that I wrote and shared with Carlos, it's like you don't know whether Spock is having a hallucination of Kirk coming into this room, or it's literally, Spock's a ghost and Kirk's a ghost, or, all of that is very vague, but the reunion is real. So the soulful, reunion of these two characters happens. And I think that, there was definitely like a few starting points, like, well, we want to know exactly like where what is happening, what the literal interpretation is. And I think we resisted doing that. But what worked for everyone, I think, was the emotion of that reunion and the fact that we had set it up so that it's complete. I mean, this is in the place where Spock dies. Like New Vulcan was never shown in the movies, so we had to sort of bring that whole cloth. But we did sort of set that up, and I think that we resisted also. I mean, telling a traditional Star Trek story as well. It is really more of a journey of these characters beyond the one moment in time, and it worked. I think I don't know if that answers the specific question you're looking for.
Well, and then quickly, when Kirk sees himself at the different ages.
Oh, okay. So that's the scene before. There's a lot of there was a moment where you almost, if you guys remember have ever seen the movie Superman 3 with Christopher Reeve, where Chris Reeve is split in two personalities, right? There's the Clark Kent, the good side and bad side. The idea is that Kirk is sort of seeing versions of himself, and it is, Carlos and I were deliberately calling out to 2001, right, where you see Dave Bowman at the end of that film looking at him. I mean, time is completely warped, so he's looking at himself in the future from the across the room, and all of a sudden, whatever lifetime passes in a moment. The point is when Kirk goes from wherever you see him in that garden in the park area to Spock's literal deathbed. There's a part where which version of Kirk is going to show up at that, or Kirk himself is sort of going through the, sort of through the spiritual realm in the sense of, your material self is one slice of your entire world line, and we did do the scene, and we even offered to build like, do you want to play an older Kirk, all these things, but we did represent. Sam played Kirk in 3 eras, the young Kirk from the TV series, the Kirk that was sort of almost in his prime in the movies, and then Kirk at 60 post retirement, and it was a beautiful scene that again, I mean, so much of what has influenced the design line, which are all these pieces, is 2001. And the other thing I will add to the point of why we go back to the motion picture for the Roddenberry Archive in so many different ways is that when Gene was, the only novel that Gene ever wrote for Star Trek was a novelization of that first movie. And he also was, I mean, the first Star Trek movie is this ambitious, like weird film, but it was very much in the vein of 2001. And a lot of people, including me, watched 2001, didn't fully understand it. It took me decades to like really appreciate it. So there's a lot of that influence.
I don't understand it.
Sorry? Well, here's the thing. You read the novelization by Arthur C. Clarke. It was a very weird film where it's like the novelization was being written as the film was being made. And Arthur C. Clarke's novel was very literal. It explains everything. And when I read the novel, I was like, oh, well, gosh, if only I'd read the book before I saw the movie, I would have understood everything. And then you have Kubrick saying, well, like you can't understand it. That's a point. And then I was like, oh, I get it. That's the point. And he had this sort of tension, I guess, with Arthur C. Clarke. The thing is, your dad and Arthur C. Clarke were writing to each other all the time while the Star Trek motion picture was being made. And it's very clear that your dad was trying to capture that sense of wonder, that depth. I feel like that to me is core Star Trek. So everything that we were doing that was not necessarily as obvious was very much in service of that. And I think if we were to ever, visit Star Trek, it would almost be to explore that world more. And the last time your dad even did anything with Kirk and Spock was literally that 1979 movie and the novelization. And there's a lot of great stuff there that was sort of on the cutting room floor, but in the novel that I think we're trying to mine for all these pieces, these concept pieces.
Thank you. I just wanted to hear the answer.
Well, also, I would love to, you talking, we're about to hit the 60th anniversary of Star Trek, right, in September. And you are a producer on I guess now that a lot of them have been canceled.
I'm one of like 12 executive
12,
producers.
But you've had experiences on the last 10 years of Star Trek. You've seen it all go through all these things. And of course, we've been friends for 40 years. We grew up with this stuff. What is your view on the franchise today, where it's going, and also how you feel these pieces fit into all of it?
Oh, thanks for a simple question. What I will say is I believe and I love the Star Trek that lets us think a little and see different points of view. And certainly we need to be entertained by it. You've got to have that. You can't just have messages all the way through the whole thing. But the one that challenges you to at least see maybe another perspective. I always use the reference of Devil in the Dark, which is, original series episode where, the Horda is down there and killing humans and we're coming to save the day. And of course, we learn that it's intelligent and it's a mother protecting its young. And spoiler alert, we're harvesting its eggs. And so that kind of depth where you don't kill the bad guy, you understand, you make an attempt to understand the other point of view. And then in the realize, you wonder who's the devil in the dark. Well, it's the humans killing the children. So that kind of depth, that kind of storytelling. I said this on stage yesterday. Hail Mary, Project Hail Mary is a phenomenal movie. There's no traditional bad guy. That is the kind of Star Trek. That's the kind of storytelling I personally think we need right now as a species. I'm sick of the dystopian futures. And to have something like this where you're bringing life to these characters and giving them their ending, and it's done in such a beautiful way, and the things that you're talking about and the things that are planned, I absolutely love this, and this fits in beautifully. And we know it fits in beautifully because everyone loves it. 38 million views.
40 million views, yeah.
Sorry, 40 million views, unlisted. And you've got Paramount keeping their mouth shut. Kind of, you are meeting them and they're giving you a hard time, but they're letting you do this because they know. Well, and the first time when you didn't get permission, the first time you didn't get permission and I got calls, wasn't because really they were upset. I think someone saw this and said, holy shit, this is good. Yeah. We gotta figure this out.
Yeah, so we did this with Rod as part of the documentary for the archive, and then Paramount was like, wow, this is like another level. We need to under license, which we did, and so but I've been told it's time for Q&A. So I thank you guys for this beautiful presentation. I know it's Star Trek, right?
Can I just add to really quick? One thing that I will say with this piece is because I saw the pressure of this world and these characters and the whole legacy, I could not let the pressure kind of get in my head. So one of the things that another filmmaker told me a long time ago is just be honest about the work. So for me, with this piece and everything that I approach right now, this piece, even though we have Kirk and Spock, for me, what was important was what is relatable to me. So because these two characters, basically for me, I had just lost my mother months before we started the shoots. So for me, it was literally in my head, and even when talking to the actors, it was like, is my mom reuniting with my father, wherever they're at? And that's kind of so there are little hints in there, like the hand, it was me holding my dad's hand until his very last breath. Our dog, she loved sunsets and she loved the beach. So like I wanted to have a sunset as a closure type of, So like for me, I feel like, the Star Trek will appreciate, of course, the world and the characters that they grew up with. But people that don't know Star Trek, hopefully they can relate, because we all have said goodbye to loved ones. So that, for me, the human story is very important to everything. So, yeah.
Questions?
You okay still? How long is this film, and can we watch it right now?
Yeah, it is 8 minutes, and it is on YouTube. So if you go to the roddenberry.x.io.
No, right here.
No, we can't watch it right
Wait. No.
I wish I thought everyone had seen it, so if not, we should have probably played it before. But it is.
Yeah, there's this film on YouTube called Unification. It's 8 minutes long. It's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're in the theater.
Agreed.
Anybody else?
We showed it last year. We did. On the big screen.
Why wasn't here?
Yeah, so this is our sort of follow-up to last year's thing where we showed it.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. We'll build it into next
We'll
year.
build it into next year.
Thank
Promise.
you. I'll be here. But I'll watch it.
On the LED.
Oh, exactly.
Any other questions?
Well, then we'll give you another 5 minutes then, right?
Can I ask? I don't know. Can you talk about the title at all, or is that super secret? No.
I mean,
Can you talk about the title?
microphone.
This has many layers. It's an onion, and if you get in his head, which I don't recommend,
Don't do
you'll
it.
see
Might not
how
find your
deep
way
it
out.
goes. And I don't want to give away any of your secrets, but
No, it's not. It's actually. I mean, so the title is from a. It's if I was prepared for this question, I'd show it. It's in the comic book. There's this character that we showed in the first piece, which is from your dad created this character, Yeoman Colt, from the first pilot. She goes to the future. She sees how the world of Star Trek plays out, and she, and that's the whole thing in the military. You give your name, rank, and serial number, right? That's her serial number. She gives that. I use that as a title because it was immediately tells you where the story is coming from. The whole point of that very first teaser, the 22nd one, is in the comics. She goes back to her time, but on the way there, she has this very 2001 experience, which we filmed in all these different ways. And it's just at the very beginning of the piece, you see her eyes opening, you see the world. She sees everything. In the comics, she sees the future, all the different things, everything up to that point, the history of Star Trek. So. It's almost like, well, that's already happened. All of the things that she's witnessed are yet to come. And that's always, remember, we did these things one at a time. So if that was the last and only piece we ever did, I figured that would, for the 22 seconds that we did for that one, that would be it. But everything connects to that first piece. So that's where the title comes from. Yes, it is a deep cut, but then again, I just felt that was the appropriate for the perspective that we're coming into Star Trek. We're not doing a TV show. We're not doing a movie. We are threading ourselves into a moment in time or space, or all from the lore. And when we did this, it was also in service of the Cage, right? The original. We had the director there. We had May there as Colt. So that's where it began. And every chapter we've added, of course, has become more ambitious, longer, and is becoming more and more in the realm of the main Star Trek story. But that's where it all comes from. Question in the back.
Wait, hold on 1 second, please. Hold up, I'm not running for anything.
Okay. Hello. So my question, unfortunately, is not specific to this, but it is to the Star Trek universe. I was experiencing some of the world's virtual reality, and I wanted to know if that will be available to us.
Yeah, I can answer that.
Okay.
So it is. You go to all those worlds on the website. It just plays back in the browser and it streams in. The VR experience in particular, though, we released an initial version that was for the Apple Vision Pro headset. And we are definitely, the reason why we have this other one built is that we do want to put it out there for the PC. So it is something we're discussing with Paramount about putting that out there, because I think it is a very different experience in PC VR. And so anybody that's had a chance to try that probably can attest to it. So yes, it is planned. This is a sort of an early preview of that.
But you can see it online now.
You can see it online now.
And through the Apple Vision.
And through the Apple Vision Pro. We have an app for that. Yeah. The Quest app that you were seeing is not released yet. it's experimental because unfortunately we would have to download like hundreds of gigabytes of data to run that. That is the technical reason why we haven't put out the Quest version, because it'd have to be downloaded locally to run on that device. If you want to stream it in, which we do on the Apple Vision Pro, that could definitely be done on Quest with the WebVR or WebXR, sorry, but it's not the same experience as what you might have had in the on the show floor, where we have it running on a high-end PC where you can actually walk through the sets, which is a unique and wonderful experience. So we're working to figure out how to get the download to be reasonable and make that happen.
So I also noticed that the worlds were specific to the Star Trek ships. Will we also have like maybe the Klingon, the Borg?
Oh, well, you must not have seen then all the other. Well, because I don't know if we had everything loaded, but yes, we have everything practically. I don't know if Donnie's here, but I mean, the team has built everything from their Klingon ships in the motion picture to the TV shows. We also have built elements from Deep Space Nine, Quark's Bar. Everything that you've seen on screen in some form or another, the sets have either been built or are being put out there, and then we're going to other places. But yes, the idea is not just the Star Trek Federation ships, but the entire world of Star Trek.
How many ships do you currently have?
I mean, you guys are telling us. I feel like we're like in the. Yeah. Well, yeah. It's in like. Sorry.
We have a super fan over there.
Gotcha.
Oh.
She's doing Q&A by herself. Last questions. Or maybe one more after. We'll see.
Has anyone seen this and approached you to do other, sort of things like this, where you're preserving the world or the IP or parts of it for other things? Because in a perfect world, there'd be a museum for each of these things, and you could experience all of them.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, to be fair to this work, I mean, we talked to Disney and Warner Brothers. Well, now the Warner Brothers to be part of Paramount. They're all investors in us. We pitched the same thing to all of them. Obviously through Rod. I mean, we started this with Roddenberry, not with Paramount initially. And Paramount gave us their blessing. We did this with Warner Brothers. If you guys saw the Batcave that we had built outside, I mean, we worked with Warner Brothers to build exactly that. Bruce Timm, that created the animated series, effectively did the same thing with Roddenberry, and our same artist built that. We pitched the same thing to Disney for the Death Star. We actually had Donnie who built a lot of these sets. We have so much other IP that we've been building, and it's just a question of the licensing rights with the studios. And that is something that we would love to release more and expand. It is mostly the Roddenberry Archive, but it also is the archive to include other elements, other sets. We built all of the sets for 2001, which we put in a mini documentary that Mike Adiz also helped us with. And so, yeah, there's many other worlds. We're just waiting on commercial agreements with the rights holders to add that to the explorable pieces here.
Awesome.
Congratulations to the OTOY team.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. Amazing team.
Buy your tickets now for RenderCon 2027.
Yes, let's go.